To be honest, I still struggle to fully grasp what happened to me. Everything I witnessed beyond the limits of our reality defies common sense, scientific theories, and the familiar material view of the world. As unbelievable as it may sound, I became personally convinced that another unseen realm of existence is real. But that wasn't even the most terrifying part. While I stood on the very brink of life, something was revealed to me. Something official sources avoid speaking about. Doctors won't mention it, nor will scientists or clergy. I was shown what is hidden from humanity, the truth about what awaits us after death. And if the world were to learn this truth without filters, the reality we know would collapse and never be the same again. Yet the most astonishing thing was this. What I experienced shattered every idea I had about the soul and its existence beyond the physical body. What lies beyond the threshold we call death cannot be imagined unless you see it yourself. That is how Mikhail Ovchinnikov described his extraordinary ordeal, a man whose soul slipped out of his body not once, but 6 times, as he hovered between leaving and returning. This strange, frightening yet uplifting experience profoundly transformed his inner world and marked the beginning of his spiritual journey. He remembered how, for most of his life, he had worked as a rocket testing engineer and spent his spare hours painting. But everything changed completely on Monday, the 23rd of August in the year 1099, when the event occurred that altered his fate forever. He had left home early that morning to attend to work matters, just another day like countless others. But on the road, something happened that became a turning point, a severe accident whose consequences were nearly fatal. The ambulance arrived immediately. When the emergency doctor examined him, the first thought was simple: no chance of survival. Yet while the medical team debated whether it was even possible to save him, Mikhail continued to cling to life, although, as he later said, it was already a completely different kind of life, a life on the threshold of eternity. He said something incredible took place. Despite the grim predictions, he not only survived, but found himself in a place inaccessible to the living. And what he saw there has the power to rewrite any person's understanding of the world and force them to contemplate things far beyond logic. The first thing he noticed was his own shattered body. It didn't look like a body at all, more like a torn sack filled with scattered essential parts that no longer formed a whole. His soul had slipped out of it suddenly, as if torn free by a violent gust of wind. The transition was so swift that only a faint, blurry echo remained in his memory. But what happened afterward stayed with him vividly. All the pain that had gripped his body vanished instantly. In its place came an extraordinary sense of lightness and freedom, like taking a deep breath of the purest air imaginable. The peace of that state felt strangely familiar, as though he had always longed to be in exactly that place. Everything earthly faded away, taking his suffering with it. What remained was only calm, serenity, and weightlessness, sensations impossible in ordinary life. This experience strengthened his faith. The physical world is only a small fragment of a far greater design. For a brief moment, he was allowed to glimpse what lies beyond the veil of eternity and then return to the living with that knowledge. He went on to recall the following. Little by little, I began to make out the sounds and colors around me, as if my senses were returning, but to a world entirely different from the one I knew. Before me unfolded a realm of breathtaking beauty, filled with a soft, otherworldly light that ordinary language simply cannot capture. And within that glow I noticed someone who had left the earthly world long ago, my spiritual mentor. He greeted me with a warm smile and told me gently that I had arrived far too early. Mikhail later recalled that their communication happened without a single spoken word. Everything was conveyed through their eyes. This unusual way of exchanging thoughts felt surprisingly natural to him, as though he had known it his entire life. For the first time, the familiar saying, "The eyes are the mirror of the soul," revealed its literal meaning. His mentor's appearance remained only vaguely imprinted in his memory. He seemed to be wearing something like a flowing cloak, its surface shimmering with a silvery radiance. Yet what left the strongest impression was not his clothing, but the conversation itself, or rather, the deep spiritual dialogue in which the mentor examined Mikhail's entire life moment by moment. It was a difficult and painful ordeal, because in that realm, as Mikhail discovered, neither thoughts nor emotions can be concealed, not from others and not from oneself. The mentor helped him understand that returning was inevitable. He had to go back into his body and share what he had witnessed. After reawakening, Mikhail faced a long and exhausting struggle to restore his health. His body, weakened by the accident and by hovering on the brink of death, required extensive treatment. That period tested him profoundly. Constant pain, limited mobility, and the daily challenge of overcoming physical weakness. Yet he refused to give up. He sensed that receiving a second chance was not accidental. A new purpose lay before him, not only to heal, but to comprehend the meaning of what he had seen. Over time, he grew more and more convinced that the experience had been given to him as a profound spiritual message. His story became a revelation for anyone willing to listen. He said that the accounts of people who stood on the threshold of eternity were surprisingly similar. Those who glimpsed the other world spoke of radiant light and extraordinary beauty, and nearly all of them claimed that such an experience transforms a person completely, because it makes one realize, perhaps for the first time, how easily life can end. Another person who lived through something comparable was the renowned physicist Vladimir Efremov, a key participant in launching the first cosmonaut and a developer of spacecraft. His reputation in the scientific world was impeccable, and he had absolutely no reason to invent anything sensational. Yet he too once found himself in a realm beyond life and returned to reveal what most people never see. It happened while he was visiting his sister. A severe coughing fit caused by a chronic illness quickly drained his strength, and he soon lost consciousness. His heart stopped. In that instant, as his breath faded, he understood clearly. His earthly life was ending. But instead of emptiness, he felt lightness, a gentle, almost pleasant weightlessness. The most remarkable thing was that his consciousness remained completely intact. Later, he compared the sensation to what a child feels in a dream when experiencing the thrill of flight. Like countless others before him, he sensed his soul separate from his body and rush forward through a long tunnel toward a brilliant light. He no longer felt his physical form, but he was fully aware of everything happening around him, and he felt neither fear nor anxiety. He said that everything seemed fresh, new, and astonishingly vivid. His awareness expanded to embrace everything at once, as though boundaries, time, and distance no longer existed. The space around him seemed to collapse into a long, glowing tunnel, filled with a steady radiance that cast no shadows at all. Along the inner walls of this column of light, he noticed strange formations, almost like uneven carvings or ridges. There was no way to tell where the top was or where the bottom was. Yet the simple realization that he was still able to think convinced him that his existence had not ended. As he moved through this tunnel, Vladimir Efremov experienced something extraordinary. He suddenly understood that he possessed complete knowledge of everything connected to the earthly life he had just left behind. It felt as though he had stepped beyond the limits of all human comprehension. His memory seemed to merge with an immense informational field of the universe, becoming an inexhaustible source. He also emphasized that beyond our familiar world, there are far more dimensions than we ever imagine. He explained that his interaction with the surrounding space gradually stopped being one-directional. Any mental question he formed was met with an immediate answer, appearing from nowhere yet perfectly clear, and he said processes in that realm do not unfold in a linear sequence as they do in our world. There, everything happens simultaneously, branching out in countless directions at once. Every object on the other side exists as a kind of informational structure, but the most remarkable part came later, after he had calmed himself and began examining more carefully the place where he found himself. That was when he sensed the presence of a being he could not see, yet could feel unmistakably. This presence had no boundaries, but he perceived it distinctly and gently, as though it were guiding him, showing him various phenomena and revealing the links between them. Efremov admitted that he could not tell who or what it was, perhaps a guardian angel, perhaps a spiritual guide, or perhaps the divine essence itself. But the most important realization was that no one crosses into that realm alone. There are always those who come to meet you. His journey, however, was not without difficulty. At one point he felt something invisible pulling him back, preventing him from moving deeper into the higher regions of that world. It was as if a force were dragging him backward, the way a root is torn from the soil. And then, suddenly, he was thrown back into his physical body. The first words he spoke upon returning astonished his sister. He said that there is no such thing as an end, and that beyond our reality life continues, simply in another form. The few minutes that passed on earth became, for him, an immense spiritual journey. The soul of the scientist encountered what ordinary people cannot even begin to understand. Later, once he had fully recovered, he said that death no longer frightened him, because it is nothing more than a passage into another realm. Feel free to share in the comments whether you believe in life after death. Wishing everyone peace and long years of life.